Hello everyone, welcome back. So we are continuing our journey of coordinate geometry, and in this particular lecture we would be talking about the midpoint, and we will be talking about the concept of gradient, which is also referred to as the slope or the incline. Now let's get started with the idea. Whenever we are studying coordinate geometry, it's always necessary to draw a grid. So we draw a vertical axis and we draw a horizontal axis, and then we label it. So therefore, this is the x-axis, this is the y-axis, this is the origin. And let me label a point over here, actually 2 points. One of them is Q and the other point is R. Let me draw a line between these 2 points, that is Q and R. Now let me write down the coordinates of Q as x1 and y1. The coordinates of R is x2 and y2. Now I'm interested in a point. I'm calling this point as M. This point lies exactly between Q and R. That means the distance from Q to M is exactly the same as from M to R. So M is a point such that the distance QM is exactly the same thing as MR. What do we call such a point? Such a point is termed as midpoint. So now we are talking about midpoint. Remember the word average. Average is associated with midpoint. Now the question is, when we use the term average, if there are two values given, we will take the average of those two values. If we talk about the x coordinates, that is x1 and x2, and if I'm talking about the average of these two, what will I write? So let me scroll up a bit. I'll write x1 plus x2 divided by 2. Similarly, let me scroll down again. If I'm interested in the average of these two y values, which is y1 and y2, so I'll write y1 plus y2 divided by 2. That means the coordinates of M is the average of the x coordinates, it's the average of the y coordinates. Let me illustrate this idea with a simple example. Let me draw a line. A grid is not needed. Let me label this point as A. The coordinates are 2, 3, and let me label this point as 10, 11. So now if I'm interested in finding the coordinates of the midpoint, I'm using orange color for the x coordinate. This is 2 and 10. So I'll write 2 plus 10 divided by 2. Similarly, I'm using green color as before for the y coordinates. That is 3 plus 11 divided by 2. So therefore, the coordinates of M are as follows. 2 plus 10 is 12. 12 divided by 2 comes out to be 6. And similarly, 3 plus 11 is 14. 14 divided by 2 is 7. So therefore, the coordinates of M are 6, 7. That is how the coordinates of midpoint is evaluated. Now the next concept. The next concept, that is about gradient. And we won't jump directly to the formula. We would talk about the concept a bit. So gradient, slope, incline, and yes, there is one more terminology which I'll use in a short while. Now let's say you are in some hilly area, and over there the inclination is going like this. So let me use a ruler, which I forgot to. So the inclination is very slight, something like this. And this orange line is representing the horizontal movement, and this green line is representing the vertical movement. Let's say this is 50 units, and this is 1 unit. That means if I start from this point, I go to this point, let's say this point is C, this point is D. I'm walking 50 units horizontally, I'm walking 50 units to the right, and I'm rising up by 1 unit. That means on the signboard over there, it would be written something like this: the incline or the inclination is 1 in 50. What does it mean? It means that the slope of this road is 1 in 50. That means you walk 50 units horizontally, you would rise up by 1 unit. This is exactly what slope and what gradient means. Now again, I'm drawing a line and I'm labeling some coordinates. So first of all, let me label this thing as A. So this point is A, this point is B, coordinate of A is x1, y1, coordinate of B is x2, y2. And if I again talk about the horizontal movement in this direction, if I talk about the vertical movement in this direction, if I talk about the base like we did in the previous lecture, that is the difference between x2 and x1. So this is x2 minus x1. That is the base. If we talk about the height, that is, I missed out the t. That is the difference between y1 and y2. So this is y2 minus y1 because y2 is higher, y1 is smaller. And yes, it's a right angle triangle. I'm not talking about the distance for right now. I'm just talking about the change in y over the change in x. So first of all, I'll use the formula slope or gradient. That is the change in height divided by the change in base. Change in height can be termed as rise, and change in base can be termed as run. So that gives us another definition for slope, that is rise over run, a very, very commonly used definition. Now I know that the height is what? The height is y2 minus y1. And what is the change in the base, the run? That is x2 minus x1. So hold for a second, I'll use x2 minus x1 over here and then a white line to divide the two. So therefore, the formula for gradient, the formula for slope is this. M is the symbol that we use for gradient. So the formula is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, change in y over change in x. So let me write down it again. M, that is change in y divided by change in x. Change in y is basically the height. It can also be referred to as the rise. And then change in x is the base of that triangle. It can also be referred to as run. Also, we can write this thing as y2 minus y1. We can write this thing as x2 minus x1. And that is how this definition is created. That is the definition of the gradient of a line. So now we can get started by working it out. So let's say I'm again drawing a line as usual, and coordinate geometry is all about lines and points, and there is nothing much to it. So now this is A, this is 0, 1, this is B, this is 5, 11, and therefore the slope is change in y over change in x. So what is the change in y? That is the difference between 1 and 11, but go in a particular direction. So basically what I'm doing is that, let me write it properly. I'm writing B at the top, that is 5, 11. I'm writing A at the bottom, that is 0, 1. I'm using a symbol like this. So change in y is this thing, that is 11 minus 1. Do not mess up with the order, that is 11 minus 1. and change in x is 5 and 0, 5 minus 0. So what do we get at the top? That is 10. What do we get at the bottom? That is 5. So 10 divided by 5, this comes out to be 2. That is the slope of this line. Let me draw another line just to give you some variety. So another line that's going like this. And this time, this point is C. And this point is, let's say, 0, 10. And this point is 5, negative 1. So this is C, this is D. Gradient of CD is what? Change in Y. Again, this is 10, this is negative 1. So this is 10 minus 1. And we are dividing it with the change in x, which is 0 and 5. This is 0 minus 5. What do I get at the top? 10 minus 1, that is 11. And there is a 5 at the bottom. So therefore, this can be written as 2/1/5. And that is the gradient. But now it has a negative sign because of this. The numerator was positive. The denominator was negative. So this is negative 2/1/5. That means something very common, but we should not take it lightly. A line which is going like this versus a line going like this. So a line going up like this has a positive slope. And a line going down like this has a negative slope. And the calculation proves it. Now, are there any other possibility? The answer is yes. There are two other possibilities. Let's talk about it. So first of all, I'm drawing the grid like this. Actually, let me just draw the line like this. And let me draw a line, an orange line going like this. So hold for a second. Let me just change the order and it would be a little bit thicker. Okay. So now the line is like this. And let me label 2 points over here. This is the y-axis, this is the x-axis, this is the point Q, this is the point R, this is 1, this point Q is 3, 1, and this R is 7, 1. Now this is a flat line, a flat horizontal line, and this line is parallel to x-axis. Now it's parallel to x-axis. Why? Because the y coordinate does not change. So a line parallel to x-axis, y coordinate does not change. And over here, we are simply talking about the slope. We will talk about the equation of a line in the next class. So this is 1, this is 1. It does not change. Now what happens is that if I calculate the gradient of QR, that is 1 minus 1 over 3 minus 7. This is 0 over negative 4, which comes out to be 0. Remember the rule, 0 divided by any number is 0. So I'm not going into the details over here. There is 0 over here in the numerator, any number in the denominator. Of course, we are not talking about 0 over 0. That is in calculus at the university level. So this is 0 divided by any number is 0. That means the slope of a line parallel to x-axis, slope of line parallel, I'm using the symbol to x-axis is 0. And that is what I got over here. What's the other scenario? Again, I'm using the grid. So I'm drawing the x-axis and the y-axis. And let me draw a line. So let me just choose this and something like this. And I'm drawing a line that is parallel to y-axis. So this is y, this is x. And let me look at the labeling, what I've written at the top. Flat horizontal line parallel to x-axis. So first of all, I'm writing a vertical line parallel to y x's. Now let me choose 2 points over here. The first one is over here. Let me write S and the other one is T. The coordinate of S are, let's say this is 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and this is 3, 5. Now, which coordinate is not changing? The x coordinate does not change. So the x coordinate does not change. That's the x coordinate, that's the x coordinate. Now this time when I calculate the gradient, so let me write t, which is 3, 5. Let me write s, which is 3, 1. Gradient of st or ts, that is 5 minus 1 over 3 minus 3. This is 4 over 0. And this time I'll say that nobody has been able to define it as yet, so it's undefined. So let me write another statement. That is, any number divided by 0 is undefined, because when you are dividing a number into 0 parts, so therefore how will you break it? So this is undefined. So therefore you cannot separate a number into 0 parts. That's simply not possible. That is undefined. What will the calculator say? When you try it out in the calculator, it will say there is a math error. Actually, let me just explain one more thing. That is, let's say I have a number 4. I divide by 2, I get 2. I have 4 divided by 1, I get 4. 4 divided by half, I get 8. Look at the pattern. And let's say 4 divided by 1/4, that comes out to be 16. 4 divided by 1/8, that comes out to be 32. That means if the top number is fixed and if it gets smaller and smaller, this number will get very, very big. And yes, sometimes we use the terminology infinity also. So now what is the bottom line of the story? That means a line parallel to y-axis has an undefined gradient, a line parallel to x-axis has a 0 gradient, and a positive slope looks like this, a negative slope looks like this. And what have we learned in this particular video? In this particular video, which is lecture number 2 of coordinate geometry, we talked about midpoints. We talked about the concept of slope, rise over run, gradient, incline, things like that. And there are 4 types of gradient. There could be a positive slope, there could be a negative slope, there could be a 0 slope, and there could be an undefined slope. So see you in the next class.